I've just received these rather lovely 3D fingernail art stickers. They are certainly pretty, but I think they may well be a game changer for my model making. But enough of that, I have a video to get on with. Welcome to Chandwell. My name's Michael and I'm building an elegant town hall for my model railway layout. I've just finished this rather smart tripartite window on the town hall's cylindrical tower. Because it's N-gauge, it's very small, and I had to decide which parts of the even more extravagant prototype to include, and which parts to leave out. In this extended episode, I will show you the process I went through to make this beauty. And as a special treat, I'll also be showing you another layout which really inspires me, and which I think you'll love too. So let's get on with it then, making an elegant stone window from paper and card. The real thing is massive. The central window is 3 1/3 meters tall. The entire thing from bottom to top is almost 6.5 meters. But in N-gauge, that's still only 43 millimeters. The real one has columns and scrolls and sills and carvings and rather fancy balustrades. Obviously in N-gauge it would be impossible to get this much detail from hand-cut card elements. So the first job is deciding what to include and what to leave out. I turned to the free drawing application Inkscape. I started by drawing out the window using simple rectangles. Shades of yellow represent card that will stick directly to the tower face on. Pale yellow will be paper, mid yellow will be 2 or 3 layers of paper, and dark yellow will be 1/2 or 1 mm card elements. The orange, green and blue parts will be 1/2 mm card stuck edge on and represent the elements that protrude further out of the tower, the sills. I had to work with the dimensions of the materials I will be using, so this guided me to decide the overall shape. I wanted it to be as close to the original as possible, but some detail is simply not cuttable from card. I have no hope of making these tiny balustrades, but I have another plan for there. So with the window drawn out, I had the challenge of the curved tower to contend with. Bring on the mathematics. So I had these sills to make. I needed to get their shape exactly right if I was to make the window successful. I knew the dimensions of the tower, so I started with the circles I'd used as the inner supports. The card, wrapped around it, added about an extra 2 mm to the circle's diameter, so I used that circle as the starting point. I then drew 5 more circles, getting progressively larger, and these would be my guidelines for the edges of the different parts of the sills. I knew how wide I wanted the sills by simply measuring the rectangles from before. The green ones, for example, are 36.25 mm. So, we know the length of an arc that we want around the circle, 36.25 mm. We know the diameter of the circle, 42.743 mm, and that gives us the radius, 31.372 mm. And that gives us the circumference, 134.28 mm. And now, finally, we can divide how wide we want the sill to be, 36.25, by the circumference, 134.28, and multiply the whole thing by 360 to give us the angle of a circle's segment, 97.184 degrees. Now we can draw a line in Inkscape, duplicate it, and rotate it by 97.184 degrees. This gives us an angle that, when placed in the centre of the circle, gives us the position of the sill. We repeat that for the edges of all the window's other components, and we are left with a kind of virtual jig that we can use to draw our sills. By duplicating and cutting up the circles into pieces, we can then reconnect the dots and be left with 3 shapes: orange, blue and green. These will be the elements that make the sills. So I printed them to sticky label and stuck them to 1/2 mm card. You can appreciate how small they are once cut out, but thankfully they fit around the tower perfectly. I used PVA glue to stick them in stacks of varying arrangements. I took the time to get them aligned just right. At this tiny size, it is easy to tear the card and it can actually start to delaminate into paper strips. So I always print a couple of spares just in case. A quick check to make sure I was on the right lines and I was good to go. After almost 3 hours work, I ended up with 3 little sills. I painted them stone colour with this Israeli sand primer. and then dry brushed with mixtures of sand, white and flesh until the colour more or less matched that of the printed parts. Some of the parts are tiny. These column bases are just 2mm by 4.5mm, stuck to 1mm wide card, and then painstakingly wrapped stone texture around them. Maybe I should have just painted them instead. With the parts prepared, I used a floor plan to be sure I was positioning the base sill centrally on the texture that is wrapping the tower. I used PVA and just pressed it into position. I stuck the column supports on next, and it was obvious that this was going to work. What about this central part then? The real thing has fancy balustrades, and I didn't know what to do about those. But I was reminded of the work of Adrian Cook. Adrian's amazing layout is set on the other side of the Pennines to Chandwell. It's a northwest town very similar to Chandwell and set in the same era around a heritage museum. Adrian builds models in very much the same way as I do. Multiple layers of card and paper, scale scenes textures, inkscape, the whole lot, but in 00 gauge rather than N. Following his builds on the Scale Scenes group on Facebook, his layout has been a constant source of inspiration for me. Adrian has achieved fabulous things using the strangest of materials: plastic costume jewellery, plastic beads on top of cocktail sticks, bits of doll's house furniture, and, best of all, 3D fingernail decorations. So last Saturday afternoon, I found myself unwrapping a lovely packet of fingernail decoration stickers, peeling one off, and sticking it to a tiny roll of cardboard above even tinier bits of cardboard. What a time to be alive doing a hobby such as this. It stuck on really well, and covered really well with the paint as well. It took very little effort to colour match to the tower, and I was left with a lovely plaited carved stone look. This is definitely a technique I will use again. I think it's a game changer to add that little bit of extra realism on printed texture buildings. Stick around to the end of this video for more from Adrian's as yet unnamed layout. The rest of the window casement was built in the same way. Each part drawn earlier was printed to label, stuck to card, cut out, wrapped in texture, and added to the tower. If you've seen my videos before, you will know all about the sticky label method. The huge windows were printed to a label, stuck to the acetate from an old cake box, and the glazed parts removed. Once cut out, I used a Sharpie permanent marker to colour the backs black, and then the whole thing is stuck to the tower. The black makes it look like a dark room, and there is no way to tell it's just stuck against the walls. By doing it this way, I have kept the window glazing flat rather than curved. The edges stand proud of the curved tower, but the other window elements will hide this. The stone frames are just 0.9mm wide, and I needed to paint the inside of them to hide the white of the paper. Stuck to 3 layers of paper, I cut the inside out first. This gives a solid feel to the part as I paint the edges with watercolour paint. I finally cut it out completely, and ever so carefully arrange it on top of the acetate and label window. The next part is the cylindrical column. Perfect job for a cocktail stick. Cut to length and painted, of course. Some more tiny bits at the top, and finally the top sill can go into place. I finished off with a curved bit of card. I had no idea how to do the maths for this, so my technique here was hack it with the knife until it kind of fits and use paint to fill in the holes. And then these tiny supports were made with just a couple of bits of card, 1/2 mil for the small ones and 1 mil for the bigger ones. You may have noticed I've decided to move the tower to the corner. I think this gives loads more opportunity to do interesting things with the town hall, keeps it closer to the Sorby Bridge original, and allows the tower to be seen when looking down Station Road. I'm going to start on the face of the building next. If you'd like to see behind the scenes updates and discuss my progress with me, please do consider joining the channel as a member. There's a button underneath the video, or you can use the silver button that appears at the end. But before all of that, I'd like to show more of Adrian's wonderful layout, as it deserves to be seen. It's a never-ending source of inspiration to me. Chandwell viewer Don will be interested to know that Adrian uses mirrors to great effect. I know that you'll approve of that, Don. So that's all from me. Join me next time to see the continued building of the town hall. Please give this video a thumbs up if Adrian's work impresses you as much as it does me. You can also take a look at his Instagram photos. He's adcook17. So until next time then, thank you for watching, take care, and I'll see you next time.